What is happening, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Crossed Up. I'm Bob Wankel alongside Anthony Sanfilippo, and it's breakfast with the boys here on a Tuesday morning. Anthony, you're eating.
Don't mind me while I sit here with my raisin toast and cream cheese.
I got my coffee, so we're settling in for a morning of some Phillies talk off of a disappointing weekend. Last time we talked, it was ahead of the Mets series, and Phillies were wrapping up a 4-game sweep of the Rockies, and I think that we felt going in that they had an opportunity to win a series. And, they did have an opportunity to win a series going into Sunday Night Baseball. And if I would have told you before that game that the offense was going to bang multiple homers off of Max Scherzer and that Kyle Schwarber was going to give the Phillies 2 separate leads, you would have felt pretty good about that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually felt pretty good about it watching the game. Like, even though it didn't work out, Bob, I kind of felt good about it watching it along the way. And, you know what? Eflin didn't give us the start that we needed, but here they are, and it still went to hell.
So you wake up on May 3rd, and the Phillies are coming off of an off day, and they have this series now with the Rangers before they host the Mets for 4 more at Citizens Bank Park this upcoming weekend. And I guess my question to you at this point is, was this just a series in late April, early May? We made it out last week, at least I did, that it was an important series. This was one that they needed to win. They didn't. The Mets lose on Monday night in the opener to the Braves. Phillies have really only lost a half game since we last talked. Or was that series a larger representation of more glaring issues? And I think that that's really where most Phillies fans are probably at this morning. Is it the same old Phillies? Did that series truly show us anything? Or was it just 3 games kind of clumped into a 162 marathon?
Yeah, I tend to put it on hold just to give you an answer on that yet because they're playing them so quickly again this week. And I want to take all 7 games against the Mets kind of collectively and say, okay, now let's make a decision. What does this mean? Do these games mean? I think that's, obviously you don't ever want to get no hit. Okay, so getting no hit on Friday. Even lead
with that,
So that's a bad start. And then it didn't look good early Saturday either. Like Saturday was like, oh my God, here we go again. It's like they're 5 innings, 6 innings in before they got a run. It's like, my God, what the hell's wrong with this team? But then they did what they needed to do, and really got some good pitching on Saturday, good bullpen on Saturday. You're like, all right, that was a nice win. And then come out, like you said, Sunday hit 4 home runs off of Scherzer, and you're like, this is what you wanted. This is what you wanted to see. It was kind of intense, right? The game had some, and then they threw at Schwarber in the 9th inning, and guys get suspended, and the Mets are all pissed off because they had a guy thrown out the inning before. Whatever. I mean, it's good. It fuels it. Let's take a few days off, and we'll reconvene at Citizens Bank Park, and now let's see what happens in those 4 games. I think after this weekend, we could take the 7 games collectively against the Mets and say, okay, here's where we are matched up with this team for the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. I watched this weekend kind of play out, and I guess I wasn't all that surprised by what I saw. I mean, certainly I didn't expect the Phillies to be no hit on Friday night, and I truly did not believe, and we talked about him last week, we both like Zach Eflin, think he's a nice piece, but he was terrible on Sunday night. He gave them absolutely nothing, and had he even given them just a so-so start, they'd probably find themselves walking out in New York 2 out of 3, and he just was not able to do it. And I thought that was really the most disappointing thing of the entire weekend as I size it up. The 5-pitcher combined no-hitter, it's embarrassing. You never want to be no-hit. It's a bad look. But that to me wasn't, that doesn't demonstrate that this team can't hit or that they have no offense. I mean, good teams, it happens. It will happen from time to time, and I'm not overly concerned about that. And it's weird. I stepped back yesterday, and I'm like, if you look at this weekend, and people were very upset on Sunday night. It's like same old Phillies, 11 straight years. This is, sell the team. There were a lot of people that were really upset watching the game on Sunday night. And again, nationally televised, don't play well, getting beat over your head by the Mets. You're 2-4 against them through 6 games. But I guess I took more of an approach where it was like, okay, this is, if you're a Phillies fan, this is mildly annoying, but I don't think it's it necessarily determines anything. And that's sort of where I'm still at this morning. And I have to tell you, I thought we were going to spend a lot of time talking about the hit by pitch thing. I know we got into it a little bit last week. The only thing I'll say about it is, who cares? Like, you watch the Phillies lose 2 out of 3 at the end of that series, and, you got Girardi asking the umpire, what are you going to do about it? Like, I just had no appetite for that entire sequence. It makes these upcoming games a little bit more interesting, and we'll see what happens. But I don't really have, any feeling whatsoever at the end of that game, other than that Mets fans looked absolutely ridiculous. And, play better, Phillies. You want to get tough. Like, if that's, you want to get back at them, play better. But the Phillies certainly weren't trying to hit the Mets in that game. And, I think they went inside of Schwarber, tried to hit him. And then I don't think they meant to hit Bone, to be honest with you. I don't hate that they weren't, that there wasn't an immediate ejection. I honestly think that was totally accidental.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they threw in on Schwarber. That might have been intentional.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, Schwarber, yes. Bone, I don't think so, though.
Yeah, Bone probably not. But you could tell, I mean, first of all, you want to talk about old school. I mean, Showalter's as old school as it gets. I mean, Showalter might as well be, Whitey Herzog or Earl Weaver even. Right? I mean, those are the kinds of guys I harken back to with the way that he manages games. So you're gonna kind of get that a little bit from the Mets. And look, I get it. They're trying to ride emotion right now. The Mets are trying to win off that a little bit. You can see by the way they play, simple plays. I mean, they get all fired up over simple plays. I think it's a thing that they feel like they need in order to succeed, right? Something we talked about the Phillies when they were struggling, lacking a little bit of emotion. I think that the Mets feel like they need that to be a good team.
No.
Otherwise, they might not be as good as they are.
It's very interesting. Before one of the Mets games over the weekend, Howie Rose, right? One of their media guys, one of their broadcasters was talking about how the team has sort of rallied around Buck Showalter, and every time there's an incident, Showalter comes to the top step and he's staring somebody down, and that the team is feeding off of that. And we talked about this last week with Girardi and how you don't really see that with Joe. It is interesting because you do watch everything unfold again on Sunday night, and it was a week after on national TV that he doesn't really go out and chase Angel Hernandez. He doesn't really get upset to the point where you can see it, and you just kind of, again, it goes back to, for me, and I think it's a conversation we're going to have multiple times throughout the season, I just don't see a lot of juice from this guy. I just don't. And it remains my biggest criticism of him. I don't see consistently a lot of energy. I don't think that his teams play with a lot of energy. I think that showed up again this weekend in New York. And I'm waiting to see it. And I have to tell you, we kind of laughed at the idea of firing Joe Girardi early in the season. I still don't think that that's the way to go. I still think that that's completely ridiculous. But I will say this. They're 7 series in now. They've won 2 of them. And the Rockies basically said, here you go. We're going to make 2 errors a game at the beginning of the game and just give you runs, and you can run with that. So I am kind of starting to wonder here, if the Phillies are good, which we suspect that they are better than they're playing, it is time to start seeing it. We're in May now. It's not the first week of the season anymore. We're approaching the 30-game point here. It's time to go a little bit. And they've just not... they've been consistently bad, really. 5 out of 7 series is terrible.
Yeah.
I actually think that they're lucky to be 11-12 this morning. I do. And I think that they'll probably take 2 from the Rangers, and they'll probably show a little life this weekend. And we'll be talking a week from now about the, I don't know how the numbers work out. What is it, 6 games and they're 11-12?
16 and 13.
Yeah, or the 15 and 14 Phillies. It's make a move, man. Just make a move. Run from the pack, fall behind the pack.
Yeah, but you say that, and now let's say they take the 2 from the Rangers because the Rangers flat out suck, right? Let's just say they win those 2. And all right, I'm going to say 3 or 4 from the Mets. You want to say they split? Whatever. Either way, regardless, So you got a 4-game sweep of Colorado, bad team, and you sweep them 4 games. 2-game sweep of Texas, bad team, and you sweep them those 2 games. Okay? And then in the Mets, let's say you kind of split it. I mean, you can't really split it. I mean, it's 7 games, right? So it's 3 and 4, 4 and 3, whatever you want to look at. If you're 10 and 3, 9 and 4 in those games, like, and again, look, what have you done for me lately? I can't go back and, revisit the beginning of April when, it was just kind of like extended spring training. But you look at those games and you say 9 and 4, 10 and 3. I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. I mean, you can't get to 15 games over 500 in 2 nights. I mean, you have to kind of it's a process, right, to get there. So like if you're 5 games over in 13 at 9 and 4, I'll take it. I'll take 9 and 4 every 13 games. Sure.
So and I know a lot of people have seen this now, it's 500 at the end of April in 2019, 500 at the end of the first month in 20, 500 I feel like this team is perpetually flirting with 500. And it's like, how many times over the last 3 or 4 seasons has it been, well, tonight with a win, they can move back to 500. And I just feel like, from a mental standpoint, that it's like Groundhog Day. It's just watching the same thing over and over again. And what I expect, honestly, what I expect is 2 against the Rangers, a loss on Friday, or a loss on Thursday, a win on Friday, a loss on Saturday, a win on Sunday. Like, this team, to me, I said it when we first started recording again, and it's not based on analysis, it's not based on data, it's just this observation. The team still feels like a slog to me, and the whole thing that I'm kind of coming back to is the one consistent part of it for the last 3 years has been the manager. I just don't feel like this team has any juice at all. There's no juice on this team. I don't see it.
Let me ask you this then. No, 6th inning on Saturday night. I guess it was 5th inning, 6th inning. 6th inning, I think it was. When Odubel's on third, 1 out. Ground ball to Lindor, and kind of catches him take 1 step off the bag. Throws to third instead of throws to first. They catch Odubel off the bag. Lindor's fist pumping and firing out. Everybody's going nuts, and they're yelling and screaming, let's go, and all this stuff. In a 1-0 game in April, okay, in the 6th inning.
Uh-huh.
How much further do you have to go beyond that? If you're playing at that level where you are so fired up,
you think they're just burning themselves out, basically?
It's not that you're burning yourself out. It's just that you don't, in a 162 game season, you don't have anywhere else to go. To me, it's like this is a comparison I'll make. This is like a broadcaster who loses it in the first inning or the first quarter of a football game on a touchdown, as if that's the game. Like that's the biggest play of the game. And then where do you go from there? You actually have to have a build-up. And I think that, look, it's fine to play with emotion. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't play with emotion. But if you could either be, if you're asking me, would I rather the team kind of be where they are right now at the Phillies, or would I rather them be so fired up that they have nowhere else to go like the Mets are? I'll take where the Phillies are right now, because I don't think that the Mets have another level. I think the Mets' other level is, cross our fingers, Jacob deGrom can come back and pitch the second half of the season. There is no further height that they can get to. They are playing their best baseball, their most passionate baseball right now, and they're going to have to figure out a way to do that in May, June, July, August, September, October. I don't know if that's sustainable. The Phillies are not playing their best baseball, but we've seen flashes of it, and we see, like, okay, maybe now it comes in a 4-game series against Colorado. All right, now maybe they win 4 out of 6 here this week with Texas and the Mets. And if they do, okay, well, now we're starting to see something build. We're starting to see it build. I'd rather take the slower build and get to the point where the Mets are right now, later in the season, than be there now and have nowhere else to go and have it fall. Like, it's a sugar high, right? And that's the way I look at it. And I don't want them to crash off of the sugar high.
So do you look at the Mets and say, this is a team that is just playing with their hair on fire right now, and this is kind of all they are, and they are going to fall off? Or do you look at the Mets and say, wow, they have very good starting pitching. You get into the back end of that bullpen, it's been pretty good. They seem to have an annoying lineup, I'll call it. I wouldn't say that it's an overwhelming lineup, but it's an annoying lineup. Mm-hmm. I came across, I've come away from watching the Mets, the 6 games with the Phillies so far, and I've caught some Mets games here and there. I'm fairly impressed with that team.
They're better than they were, but I still think that they have weaknesses that will rear their heads. I like the fact that they added some veteran players who are not going to lose it when things go bad, like a Starling Marte, that kind of player. Obviously, Scherzer is huge in that spot, in the rotation. I mean, these guys know how to win. They've played winning baseball before, and they're really good players. Even the guys that they got from Oakland in Kana and Bassett. I mean, they're not. They've not won anything major, but at least have been on winning teams and know how to compete. So I think that they improved the team in that regard. But the things that they're doing well, aside from starting pitching, I don't think that they will hold up. I just don't. I don't love the lineup. I really don't. Like you said, it's annoying. Brandon Nimmo's got a hate the face kind of guy, and really, every time he comes up to the plate, the way he kind of smirks at you, I almost want to just smack the guy. But he gets on base. Okay, great. Marte's a player. Boy, man, you wish you had him here. But did you see the adventures he had in right field against the Phillies? I mean, he made a couple catches that
not necessarily the best routes to the ball, but made the plays no less. So
yeah, he made the plays, but I mean, at the same time, is he going to make that play all the time? Maybe not. Maybe Marte's not as. Maybe he's now that he's 33. He's not as good in the outfield as he once was. Maybe that'll catch up to him a little bit. Look, I know Diaz is off to a tremendous start as their closer, but we've seen it before, man. The guy implodes. He gives up home runs. He walks a lot of people. He's a mental case sometimes. I can't trust this after seeing it for 1 month. I just can't. I think that there's a lot of things that could go wrong with it.
Yeah, and I think that that's fair. I think what I'm trying to do when I look at the Mets is decide what's real and what's not. And when you look at their team numbers, if you go team-wide offensively, they lead baseball right now in WAR. I mean, so the production has been there. They lead all of Major League Baseball in on-base percentage. They have the second highest team batting average. They're number 5 overall in OPS. The Phillies are number 4, to give that some context. So, I mean, the offensive output has been there. And, I just described, the first word that came to mind when I described the Mets, a deep offense and an annoying offense. But I wouldn't necessarily call it potent. But so far, the numbers kind of say that they have one of the best offenses in all of baseball. And that's where I kind of start to see maybe the regression happening a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Lindor's got to be better than he was last year, right? I mean, there's no question. He's a talent. And he had a really down year for the Mets last year. So he's got to be better. So that automatically, I think just him alone, you have to see you're going to see improvement. Alonso is Alonso. He's going to do what he does. McNeil had a down year last year, so you assume he bounces back a little bit as well, batting average, at least batting average. Right? He hit 240 last year, and the 3 seasons before that, I think it was right around 300 all 3 seasons. So you expect a little bit of a bounce back there. And adding Marte, like I said, Marte, helps the lineup a little bit too. So yeah, it's improved. But there's nothing other than Alonso in the middle of the line. Is there anybody in that lineup that you can sit there and go, oh man, this guy coming up in this spot is.
No, I mean, Dom Smith has been a player over the last couple of years that has given the Phillies some problems. I mean, but
they now have 4. Phillies now have 4 left-handed pitchers in the bullpen, right? Or supposedly have. Or they did at one point. They might have 3 right now, right? But I mean, the idea is that they can match. They want to match up with you.
Didn't match up against them on Sunday night. We'll say that. So I mean, just
they did not
play devil's advocate. I mean, I hear you. And I'm not telling you that the Mets are en route to 110 wins here, but I do think that they're a good team. And I don't think that they're a team that is just going to totally fade and win, 79 games, 81 games. I think if nothing else, we're seeing that this team is an 85 to 90, maybe even 92, 93 win team. So point being here, if I'm the Phillies, it's like, yo, it's time to go, man. Like, and that's what I keep coming back to. So we talk a little bit about the Mets and are they real or not. Let me throw out some numbers at you here on the Phillies side of things. So we talk about team-wide, the OPS. And baseball, from an offensive standpoint, all across the game, it's down right now. It's way down. And to put that into context, if I tell you this morning, Phillies have the fourth best OPS as a team across baseball, have you been overwhelmed by the Phillies offense to this point?
No, but I mean, it's the home runs is what it is. I mean, you get 4 home runs in a game. That's going to really help your OPS, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So now you look at this on more of an individual basis, right? And I mean, here you go. If I would have told you 3-4 days ago, Kyle Schwarber would have the highest OPS amongst himself, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Alec Boehm, and Rhys Hoskins and JT Realmuto of that this whole idea, like, let's bring in all these big bats and ball goes boom and bombers on broad and all this other bullshit. Like, here's Kyle Schwarber, who's been horrible up until this past weekend, and now he's got the best OPS on the entire team and he's hitting 200. So my question, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. I'll let you ask the question, and then I think my answer will be the same either way. But go ahead.
So my question becomes this: 23 games in, one good game can really sway the numbers, as evidenced by what we've seen here this weekend. Castellanos wasn't very good. He was red hot. Well, now 8-10, whatever. Schwarber goes crazy in New York, up to 838. So I just look at this whole thing, and I guess maybe one by one, do you think that the starts of the following players are reason for concern? And it starts with Rhys Hoskins for me, who wakes up this morning hitting 200 with a 300 on base percentage and a 664 OPS. I mean, Rhys Hoskins has 2 home runs right now through 23 games in 80 at-bats. He doesn't play defense. So what is he doing at this point? And also, are you concerned about Rhys Hoskins?
I am. He's not the only one, but I am concerned about Rhys. Yes.
Are you concerned about JT Realmuto, who wakes up hitting 256 with a 672 OPS this morning and has 1 home run in 21 games?
A little bit less concerned, but I will tell you that I do think that he's looked a little bit more like a guess hitter this year, Bob, than in seasons past. I've always liked his approach a lot better. Before, now it looks like he's like just lunging at stuff left, right, and center. And it's like, man, what's up with Realmuto at the plate? So yeah, I'm a little concerned. Not as concerned as Hoskins, but yes, a little bit concerned.
Nick Castellanos, just a bad series. Any concern?
Yeah, just
there?
A bad series.
Yeah,
I mean, he's still 358 on base, 810 OPS.
I agree.
He's not hitting the ball out of the park yet, but it's also not been the kind of weather. I mean, he's had a lot of balls. You've hit a lot of deep flyouts, right? That if you think in a month or two from now, those are probably going to carry over a wall.
I agree. I'd like to see a little bit more power there. I'm sure everybody would, but I'm not overly concerned with him at all. And I mean, the numbers are still pretty good here. I mean, we're not talking about a guy that's struggling overall. And then Bryce Harper, just kind of, been okay. Like, you kind of look at him and you go, okay, 253, 810 OPS, 4 homers, second on the team in RBIs, 15. Just kind of, I'm not overwhelmed by him, but okay. It's
kind of where he was at this time last year.
Yeah.
And then he ends up winning the MVP. So I'm not worried about him. But the one name you didn't mention, there's one name you didn't mention that's really concerning me right now. That's Gene Segura.
Yeah, hitting 229.
And he's your leadoff hitter.
Well, I wonder for how much longer. At what point? At what point does Kyle Schwarber go back into the leadoff spot, which is where he was supposed to be all along?
Yeah, but if he's your most productive offensive player right now, do you want him leading off?
Hey, listen, I'm just telling you that when they did the signing, this is the way that they expected it to go. Now he's starting to catch fire a little bit. So, do you do it? And I know that I know who you want to be the leadoff hitter. My only issue with it has nothing to do from a strategic standpoint or a left-right split standpoint. I think it comes back to a buy-in standpoint. And so when you tell me that you think Bryce Harper should hit leadoff for this team, I say yes. It makes a lot of baseball sense, but I don't know that the player really wants to do it. And given the clout that he has, I just don't know that you're going to see it. That's all.
I'm not saying it has to be long term, but I think if you have the conversation with him and say, "Hey, Bryce, listen, we've gotten zero production out of that leadoff spot this year.
It's amazing.
No matter who we've put there, no one's getting on base. No one's hitting. No one's doing anything. Last year, we had to rely on you to carry this team by yourself, and you almost single-handedly carried this team to a playoff spot last year with all the injuries and all the shortcomings that it had. The way you played carried this team. We need you to carry us again, but in a slightly different way. We need you to carry us at the top of the order. We need you to be the person who kind of lights the fire on a nightly basis. Because we have some guys who are going to hit behind you and some guys who are going to do some good things. And I think that you might be able to convince him a little bit more now, Bob, since there's no more pitcher batting, right? So the bottom of the lineup is an actual batter that gives him an opportunity to drive in runs still. I mean, we could talk about Mr. Number 37, who nobody likes to name. But once again, who continues to do some good things at the plate when he's playing. Again, very small sample of 24 plate appearances, but 318, batting average, 1152 OPS, and he's batting ninth. So if you have guys down there who can get on base and help turn that lineup over, it gives Harper still his opportunities to drive in runs. And maybe if you put a Segura towards the bottom of the lineup with less pressure, he becomes he becomes Gene Segura again. And in a lot of ways, it becomes like Harper hitting third if you go 8-9. If you're going Segura, Herrera, Harper, right? I mean, almost kind of as the lineup turns over. It's only one at bat really where he's leading off.
So just to put into context, two things that we'll talk about here. One, the Phillies leadoff spot this year has produced the following: 95 at bats, 15 hits. So 15 for 95, which equates to a 158 batting average, a 221 on-base percentage, a 463 OPS. They've scored 11 runs from the leadoff spot this season. That is absolutely dreadful. So that certainly, from a statistical standpoint, outlines or kind of illustrates the need for more production and the need to probably do something differently here, because that is just simply, if that continues, they will not get to where they want to go. And you look at the production from pretty much every other spot, and it's been, it ranges from acceptable to pretty good. But leadoff has been absolutely horrible. And then to go back to Herrera, like you were talking about, just kind of give you a different way to put this into context. He's been very good, at least from an offensive standpoint at the plate. And still, Phillies center fielders so far this year are hitting only 203 with a 655 OPS. So you take Herrera out of the equation and just absolutely terrible. And so you look at this, and if you don't want Odubel Herrera to hit leadoff, which I do not, I've explained my position on that numerous times, and Gene Segura is not getting it done, and you don't want to put Kyle Schwarber back into the leadoff spot, then who's left? And if JT Realmuto is struggling, it's not him. So yeah, I mean, Bryce Harper does become an option, but I just think there's something to it with him where he won an MVP hitting third. It's where he wants to hit. Does he go in and say, I get it, but I just don't want to do it? And I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I had this conversation with Junior, and he's the baseball whiz in the family, not me. And he said temporarily, you don't have to do it for the full year, but he would do the same thing. He would go Harper, he'd keep Hoskins at 2 because he thinks Hoskins will get on base still. Whether the batting average and the power come, who knows? He's a very streaky hitter, but he still thinks he'll get on base. Those numbers will go up. He does have 12 walks and 93 plate appearances. That's not terrible. And then he would bat Castellanos 3, Schwarber 4. And then you can go Realmuto, Bohm. And at the bottom you go Gregorius, Segura, Odubel. I think it balances the lineup a little bit better. And even if like I said, even if it's for just a few weeks until you get guys going again, and it's like, okay, now we can try something else. But you put Schwarber is right now your best power hitter. You put him in the best power spot to drive in runs. He's leading the team in homers and RBIs. Let him continue to do that. Don't put him at the top, and put your best player at the top who's going to find a way to get on base, which is what Bryce Harper does. He leads the team in hits, I think, or he's second in hits behind Castellanos. It makes a lot of sense for right now. I'm not saying it's something you do all year, but for right now, it certainly does seem like that's the way that the Phillies should go.
So, I guess to put a bow on this, it comes back to the following question. Is this offense going to be what people felt that this offense was going to be a month ago? Is this going to finish up as a top 5 offense? Are they going to be able to rely on this offense once we get into the summer and you go down the stretch? And we know that this is supposed to be the strength of the team. This is how this team has been financially constructed, for the offense to be what drags it across the finish line. There is enough here that looks good from a team-wide standpoint, at least in relation to the rest of the league, where you say, yeah, there's a lot to be encouraged about. But then I look at some of the individual performances and the guys that you're relying on, and I go, wow, these numbers are troubling. So I guess that's where I kind of come back. Like, I'm not looking at this on a night-to-night basis. I keep just saying to myself, can this team, as constructed, make a push to get into the postseason? And when I look at individual parts, I have questions about it. And that's where I keep coming back to at this point.
Well, they're third in the national, tied for second actually in the National League in home runs, right? So you say how is this team going to produce like we thought they would? Even if they're kind of inconsistent, they're still hitting the ball out of the ballpark, right? And in a year when home runs are down right now because of the ball, and obviously that will course correct as they fix the ball later in the year. But I mean that at least that much you sit there and go, okay, they're second in the National League in home runs. I think they're third in the National League in RBI, so they're knocking in runs when they're given the opportunity to do so. And like you mentioned, they're fourth in Major League Baseball in OPS, even though it's not a great number. It is what it is in today's game. If you're somebody who's even more into the more advanced stats like OPS plus, because that kind of gives you a little bit more, right? I mean, I think it goes. Yankees are 120, and they lead the majors. I think the Phillies 113 is like 5th or 6th or something like that. I mean, it's not too far behind. So yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like we're sitting here talking about the inconsistency of it, and there is inconsistency. But how much more inconsistent? I mean, you could be even more. Obviously, 26 teams are more wildly inconsistent than the Phillies right now. So maybe it's not as bad as we think it is. Maybe it's because we're watching it so closely and intently that we are nitpicking a little bit more. When you really look at everybody else and say, wow, maybe it's not as bad as we think it is.
Yeah, it probably is, and I think the frustration just comes down to the fact that fans are excited. People felt like this is going to be the year. This is a different team. And when you don't get a different result in these key series, there's going to be frustration. There's going to be frustration when you only win 2 of your first 7 series. There's going to be frustration when you can't seem to put it all together. There's going to be frustration when the manager in spots where you expect him to kind of come out and show some life doesn't. There's going to be frustration when you watch a game on Sunday night where it seemed like every shift that the Phillies put into place, they got beat on, which is interesting. I pointed this out during the game on Sunday night. I tweeted about this, but the Phillies got eaten alive on Sunday night with their shifts defensively. And it's interesting that nobody talks about the shift in Philadelphia anymore now that Joe Girardi's a manager, but it was a fixation when the previous guy was here. It was like, these stupid shifts and, all this data and all this. They get beat on shifts quite often. And
yeah.
It's just something that doesn't get talked about. To be honest with you, I haven't done a deep dive into it. I'm not prepared to talk about it in depth, but it's just a thing that I've started to notice with more frequency lately where I'm like, wow, had they played that straight up, that wouldn't have happened, And so I'm starting to revert back to that. I'm like, here we go with this conversation again. There's just a lot going on where I get it. Like, I get the frustration. You watch Jose Alvarado. I actually wanted to ask you about this. Jose Alvarado gets out of a tight spot on Saturday night and kind of keeps the game within reach. They end up winning the game. And then Girardi goes back to him in the same spot again on Sunday night. Is that like hey, you're really pressing your luck situation there? That would,
I think so.
or do you say, well, listen, it worked the night before, so what else is he going to do?
Yeah, no, I think it's more pressure luck because I'm not. But that's me because I'm not a fan of Jose Alvarado. I think that he's one day good, 2 days bad kind of thing, right? I mean, that's he doesn't really impress me ever. Anytime he comes in, I'll give him credit for when he brought him in. And I think Girardi made the right move there. Kind of saves the Phillies at that point because if they give up runs there, they probably don't come back and win that game Saturday.
Right.
So in a lot of ways, you got to give the manager credit for the move. I don't ever have any confidence instilled in me anytime I see Jose Alvarado come into a game. But so I think it's when he goes to him the next night in the same spot, I'm still expecting disaster, right? I mean, so I don't have any. I don't have any expectations.
Obviously, the control stuff is an issue. He can be fat at times in the zone where you go, how does this stuff not play? But he comes in and he splits the plate with a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, and the catcher gets crossed up with him. And listen, that's going to happen. But what a spot for that to happen in, and it's just an absolute killer sequence there. And again, I think, you watch a team every single night, every single day, and you pick them apart because it's what you intently watch, and things happen all across baseball. Offenses go cold, starters don't pitch deep, bullpens blow games, but when you watch this team, it just still feels disjointed, and it's like you're just waiting and waiting for everything to sort of fire on all cylinders here, and it is not.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on that, and I get frustrated too just watching it, and I just think I tend to be a little bit more patient a person with baseball. Maybe not so much other sports. I'm more of the what have you done for me lately in the other sports, but for whatever reason, and I think it's just the length of the season maybe, or maybe I've seen it so many times before in the sport. I tend to be a little bit more patient with guys and with teams in this sport than any other. Maybe that's me. Maybe I'm off. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to wake up and smell the roses. But I tend to just be like, yeah, I see what you're saying, but I'm not worried about it yet. Maybe I will at some point, but right now I'm not. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Talk to me in a week. If this is not a good week for them, if they play like they did against the Mets this weekend and go 1-3, yeah, next Monday I might have a different tune, right? I mean, but I think that as of right now, I can always look at what's coming and say I can conceivably see this group doing X, Y, Z in the next number of games and everything be okay again. So until I can't see that, then I'm probably going to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more hedgy.
So
I guess
this week you have the 8-14 Texas Rangers coming to town, and I believe you have Ranger Suarez and John Gray tonight, and I believe it's Perez Wheeler tomorrow night. Yeah. And then, so that means, I guess, if you have Wheeler on Wednesday, you will not see Zach Wheeler pitch against the Mets this weekend in a 4-game set, which is unfortunate for the Phillies. But, of course, you'll see Max Scherzer go for the Mets. You could never miss Max Scherzer when his team comes to town, it feels like. I think the Phillies have faced Max Scherzer 82 times over the last 3 seasons.
It seems like it, right?
It does feel that way. So I'll just ask you this. We will do our next show, I guess, after the opener of the Mets series. So, what do you expect to see this week? What do you expect to see, these next 3 games? 2 out of 3 acceptable? Does that kind of put you back on, and you say, okay, like we're good here? You're back at 500 there. Is that, going into the final 3 games with the Mets, do you feel good about that? I mean, this is the thing. We do these shows twice a week, and so you kind of have to take it chunk by chunk at this point. And so what is a reasonable expectation for what lies ahead here?
I will be very disappointed if they lose 1 to Texas. I will. I mean, Texas stinks. They got a couple players who can hit the ball, but their pitching is as dreadful as it gets. And you're playing at home. I mean, it's kind of this has to look. These 2 games, Bob, to me, have to look like the Colorado series. It's probably not the end of the world if they split them, but at the same time, it's like you don't want that kind of. Like, you want to go into that Mets series again, kind of feeling like, all right, here we go. We're feeling it now. We're rolling a little bit. We'll have won 7 of 9, right? At that point, if you win these 2 games against the Rangers, you look at it and go, we're 7-2 going into this big 4-game series at home against the Mets. So I need to see that. I need to see them win these 2 games.
I mean,
and then the Mets, they need to at least split. I won't be thrilled with a split. I won't be pissed about a split. But I really want to see 3 out of 4.
I mean, listen, for me, you better find a way. You better find a way to go 4-2 over the next 6, because let me just tell you, you project this thing out, and I don't want to do the NFL schedule release exercise, but then you finish up with the Mets, and then you fly out west, and you go play Seattle for 3, where, the Mariners are a decent team. I believe they're a game over 500 right now, but they're 7-2 at home. Yep. So, good home team out west. Probably going to be an issue. And then you have to go into LA for 4 and play with the Dodgers. And in recent years, that has not worked out well for the Phillies. And so then that becomes a concern. And then you come back home and you see the Padres and the Dodgers. And then you go out to Atlanta for 4. And then the Mets for 3. And then you have the Giants at home. And guess what? That's the month of May. And none of the teams in any of the contexts that I just mentioned is even remotely a series where you can kind of take a deep breath and say, all right, this is the one where we sweep. So the Phillies have not won series to this point, and the way that this May schedule sets up is not particularly favorable. So you have an opportunity here this week to do some damage, pay back the Mets, get a couple easy ones against the Rangers. You better take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not telling you that it's not. It's important. This is an important week. But I think what we were doing is we were looking at it when we looked at it at the end of last week. We looked at it as the Mets, the Rangers, the Mets. I think we kind of combined the two to kind of together because there were so many games against New York, right? And so and that's kind of why I'm kind of there right now, and want to wait and see. But yeah, I think that this kind of ties in a lot of ways. I think we can put the 2 weeks together, Bob, last week and this week, in the end. And that's why I was saying earlier. If you're 9-4 after these 13 games, are you cool with that? I would be.
Yeah, well, so you asked me if at the end of April the Phillies were 500, would you sign up for that? And I said, yeah, of course. So let me ask you this. Right now, here we are, May 3rd. At the end of May, if the Phillies were 500, would you be cool with that?
Yeah, because of the schedule, because of how tough it is. And that's not me just being like, oh, okay, I'm happy with 500 baseball. No, because the schedule lightens up, later, a little bit later in the season. But May is a tough month schedule-wise, and so if you come through this month, right now they're a game under, so you got to get through the month and probably play a game over, 2 games over against a lot of really good teams to be 500 at the end of the month. I'm cool with it, and it probably keeps you still in the race. You're probably still within 4.5 games if you're a 500 team at the end of the month. And then, then you start looking at June, and June's schedule starts to lighten up a little bit. You're like, oh, okay, now I can start to see some, 600 baseball in here, right? I can start to see these games where they're winning 6 out of 10 or even 7 out of 10 sometimes, depending on who your opponent is. And that's where you can make up some hay in the race. Even if you're not getting closer to the top of the division, you're probably separating yourself in a wild card race, right? So I think that's really how you got to look at it. Get through May, survive May, and then use June and July as your launching board into the trade deadline and see if there's anything you can do to improve the team at that point.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I guess that's probably what my expectation is right now as well. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have too much more to go through on this show because it's like for me, I think I'm just in this zone of prove it. Let's see more. You got to show me more.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
I have a question I'll give you one. It's kind of the prove it category there. Didi, we haven't really talked much about Didi so far this season. There was a real belief at the end of the year last year that this guy wasn't even going to be in consideration for a starting job. Now seems to be the guy at shortstop on the regular basis. He's hitting okay. I mean, he's not tearing the world up. He's not crushing the ball out of the ballpark, but he's at least got he's got some singles up the middle, which is nice. So he's not yanking the ball into right field all the time. Where are you at with Didi at this point? And do you think it's something that what he's giving you so far is something that's sustainable over the long haul for the year?
I mean, he's been okay, right? I mean, he's been fine. no pop. That would be the
Yeah.
one thing that kind of has stuck out to me thus far. I mean, I think he has 4 doubles. Has he homered yet? I don't believe he has. And so he's been okay, and I think he's done enough for the time being to keep a loose grip on his job. I still think that it's something that the Phillies have to consistently evaluate, but he's done enough where I at least say he might not be a train wreck. That there might be a little bit of bounce off of a really down year last season.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, I think. And a lot of, because we weren't sure, who was going to be. All right, is it going to be Bryson Stott? Is he going to be the guy? Man, you're going to rely on a rookie probably who isn't. We didn't think that this was his year. We kind of thought maybe at some point, but then next year would be his year. Man, you're relying on a lot there for him to come in and be the guy, because there's a lot of real uncertainty about what was going to happen with that position. It didn't really excite you for this season as a competitive team. So to have Didi be able to play the way he's played and show some veteran moxie, and to be part of a lineup that could be good over the course of the season, I think I think it's been an underrated positive for the Phillies to this point.
Yeah. Now you just need to get Gene Segura to not have the 2021 Didi Gregorius season.
Right.
And one thing I will point out now that you bring up Didi Gregorius is check Bryson Stott's progress last night, actually. And since he's gone down there, I will say I believe he's hitting a shade over 300. He has 4 extra base hits and 25 plate appearances. So it's nice to see him go down to AAA. And, sometimes how that goes, there's a letdown. You're disappointed. You kind of go, I can't believe I'm back here after I was up at the start of the season. And guys just totally shut it down and they really struggle. And to his credit, he's gone down there and he's swung the bat pretty well. So I do think that you're going to see him again at some point, probably in the next month or so. I don't know how much longer he stays down there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, do the Phillies need to carry 6 outfielders? I mean, I think that they're only doing it right now because Harper can't play out there.
Yeah.
Once Harper gets cleared, I'm going to assume that Veerling goes down, because I think that they like the notion of Roman Quinn as a defensive replacement, pinch runner, make something happen with his legs kind of thing. So I think Veerling ends up going back down. And I think that's the point. You say, well, who would come up? And, well, it could be Stott at that point. And that makes some sense. Yeah,
that's something to keep an eye on. I don't think that the Phillies probably at this point through 39 at bats for Matt Veerling and a 424 OPS. You talked about OPS plus earlier. How about a 28 OPS plus right now for Matt Veerling this morning? So
yeah, that's not good.
Not a great start for him. So yes, I would say that his time is probably short in Philadelphia unless there's a dramatic change here in the coming days.
Yeah. So one last thing. Mm-hmm. You look at the first month of the season. You say, okay, there were some pleasant surprises around baseball. There were some teams that disappointed a little bit. And there were some teams that kind of, were what they were because that's what you expected out of them, right? But did anyone kind of foresee what has happened in Cincinnati this year? This could be the worst team ever. That is saying, that's a heavy thing for me to say, Bob. But they're 3-19. And they have 0 redeeming qualities on this roster. 0. I mean, they're probably going to trade Votto, I would think, before the end of the year. He'll go somewhere to try and win a championship. Outside of that, they got nothing. And I don't know how they win any. I really don't know. They literally might break the record for most losses in a season. They are that bad. Holy hell! And they were a contending team last year. What happened?
Yeah. 3-19, 136 win percentage. They're 11.5 games out of first place in the Central already. 22 games into the season, which is almost impossible. They've lost 6 straight games, 1-9 in their last 10. Their run differential. I always like to look at run differential. I think it's a fairly decent indicator of a team's capabilities. Like the Phillies wake up this morning and they're +8. So they're 11-12. The expected win-loss 12-11. So they're within range of where they ought to be. And then you kind of go through baseball and you see the Mets are really good, plus 34. Over in the American League, the Yankees plus 42. And then you look at the Reds at minus 65.
In 22 games.
Minus 65 in 22 games. I mean, that means that they're getting on average beat by 3 runs per game. That's virtually impossible. And I mean, when you look at it, they are 1-15 against teams that are playing over 500. They have been absolutely terrible. And I mean, you look at it just in terms of both offensively and in terms of pitching. In the NL Central alone, they have the least amount of runs scored, and they have by far given up the most runs. In fact, if you go all across the National League, I believe they are dead last in runs scored. They are. And I believe that they have allowed the most runs. Yes, they have. So, I mean, they are by far the worst team in baseball. I mean, crazy bad.
That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me that a team can get that bad that quick. You know, it's just, and I know that they made a couple moves. You know, they made the one trade with Seattle where they sent Winker and Suarez out there, right? Okay, so you traded some two decent players out there, but again, they were a decent team over the last couple of years. I just don't know how you just give up on that and just say, screw it, we're going to be the worst team in baseball and start all over. Not that they have a lot coming in their farm system either. I mean, they really don't. I mean, you look at that farm system, it's just kind of like, what's next? I mean, man, that's going to be a long season in Cincinnati. I think that they might break the 120 loss record, and I think it's going to be a long way back for them. I really do.
20 losses. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it may arguably be the worst team in professional sports, maybe the most poorly run team in professional sports right now. I think that they're probably sitting at the top of the list, and if they're not there yet, they probably soon will be. I mean,
and real quick, conversely, you know, you looked at a team like Oakland, who sold off absolutely everyone, right? And in the offseason, fans were so pissed that nobody's going to the games, only getting 3,000 people at their games. They've actually been okay. They're actually like in contention in the American League West right now.
They're hanging around. I don't know what that team, like, they've lost 4 in a row, so like I will see, you know, with them.
Yeah.
That team has a way of not falling off a cliff like you'd expect it to. The biggest surprise for me out west is the Angels. You know,
Yeah.
the Angels, I feel like, are the American League Phillies and sort of have been for forever now. It's like, oh, hey, listen, they went out and they signed this player, whether it be Rendon or, you know, Ohtani's certainly worth the draw, and they just don't win, and every year they're just so disappointing. And so to see them get off to a nice start here in the early going is interesting, and I believe you'll actually see them in Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken, the beginning of June.
Yeah,
so you'll see Mike Trout come back home in the beginning of June. So kind of interested to see how the Angels do, if they can finally break through and get into the postseason, because you know, that's an organization that has tried. An organization that has spent some money but has just not been able to break through.
Yeah, and I got one last stat for you. I think you'll just get a kick out of this, because you know me, I like to troll the San Francisco Giants any chance I get. You know, Darren Ruff was last year like big part of their success story last year, right? As a role player,
Sure.
He had 16 home runs as a part-time outfielder. I think his OPS was over 900. Like he was solid. Playing every day at first base for the first time in his career, he does not have a home run yet this season.
Yeah, it's been a tough start for him.
It's been rough. It's been a rough start.
Yeah. 181, I believe he's hitting. He hasn't hurt the team overall though. Giants.
No, they're winning. They're still winning.
8 this morning. I mean, they're rolling right along. That NL West is tough, man. And I mean, even the Rockies getting swept in Philadelphia, they're 13-9 this season. I mean, even the Diamondbacks, who aren't good. That's not a very good team, but they're even hanging in there, you know, hovering around 5.
They're not good, but they have the thing about the Diamondbacks. The one thing I'll give them credit for is they have some young talent that's not like, you know, all-star talent. That's kind of like good building block pieces to put around all-star talent, and they're just letting them play and just saying, hey man, get out there and play. And you got guys that are just going out there and doing a decent job for them, you know, and that's That's why you sit there and say, yeah, they stink, but they hang in games. How do they win? Well, it's because of that. It's because of the kinds of players that they have around that aren't the greatest, but really aren't terrible. I mean, Christian Walker, for example, right? I mean, he's not hitting. I mean, I think his batting average is terrible, but he's got 5 home runs. Dalton Varsho. I'm just talking guys who are, connected to Philly. I mean, Walker's from here. Dalton Varsho, obviously, is named after Darren Dalton because his dad was the Phillies bench coach or third base coach for a while. He's got 10 RBIs. Kind of, they got some players. They got some little, who, if you put a star or two out there, these guys would be nice supporting pieces.
Hey, and real quick while we're on it before we shut it down here, speaking of former Phillies or people with Phillies connections, here's a stat line for you. 13 games pitched, 12 innings pitched. Opposing hitters are batting 143. Let's see here. I'll keep going.
I think I know who it is, but go ahead, keep going.
1 run allowed. And do I have a whip? Oh, 0.58 whip.
It sounds a lot like Hector Neris.
It would be Hector Neris. I liked Hector, and I would not have been opposed to bringing Hector Neris back. I did not foresee that stat line, but perhaps Phillies fans should have seen that coming. But he has been fantastic.
And it's because he's not closing.
Yeah.
He's not closing for them. He has not even one save opportunity yet for the Astros. 13 games, and he's coming in 6th, 7th, 8th inning only.
Yeah.
And he's done, and he's been lights out, man.
He's been awesome. So,
okay.
I mean, he's 13 appearances. He's been scored on once. It just, small sample size, I guess, work that in there, but he's been awesome for them. So keep that in mind as you're watching the Phillies parade out there with the league's, I believe, 8th highest bullpen ERA right now. So. Put a nice bow on the show.
That's as you're one to do, Bob.
Yes, I am. Yeah, we're back. We're back. That positive podcast after the Rocky series. Couldn't run 2 back to back. If you look at the titles of our shows over the last 3 or 4 years, there's never 2 in a row where you're like, oh, this is going to be happy.
It's really kind of interesting. The bullpen. It's weird.
Fine. It's been fine.
It's weird. It's a weird bullpen. Like Knievel's been good, right? We know that he's your closer. His numbers are pretty solid. Dominguez has been really nice. Other than the one game where he gave up a couple of runs, he's been really good. Brad Hand's been mostly good for them. And then you get to start some other guys like Norwood, been okay. Bellotti, been okay. Alvarado, even though I don't like him, been okay. I mean, and then you have Juris Familia, who stinks. Nick Nelson, who stinks. These guys, you bring them in. Christopher Sanchez, he stinks. Whoever comes into the lineup at those, in those spots. So yeah, there's been a few guys who've pulled down the bullpen, but there's a few guys who've actually been pretty solid out in the bullpen.
Yeah, I agree.
So
we'll see.
It's an interesting mix right now.
Too early for me to make any sweeping judgments about the bullpen. They've been fine.
I agree. Nobody's got more than 10 innings.
Not a massive issue for this team right now. All right, let's wrap it up. So we got 2 with the Texas Rangers this week before a big 4-game series with the Mets. We'll be back on Friday morning to break down what we've seen throughout the middle of the week here. For Anthony Sanfilippo, I'm Bob Wankel. Be sure to follow Crossed Up, the podcast, anywhere that you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google. Follow us on YouTube, all that good stuff, and we'll talk to you guys soon.